During a recent Canon EOS R1 announcement event in Arizona, Canon representatives told Petapixel that the R3 line isn't going anywhere. Not going anywhere like one of those Hollywood car crashes that brings death and destruction to everybody in its path, kind of not going anywhere, burnt to a crisp? I'm thinking the latter. I think Petapixel said what we've all been thinking. Side by side with the new EOS R1, there doesn't seem to be any reason for the R3 anymore. And any successor to the R3, how can it possibly come close to the capabilities of the Canon EOS R1? Here, let's have a look. There's no room for an increase in resolution. The R3 and the R1 both have 24 megapixels. And in terms of continuous shooting, the R3 does get 30 frames per second compared to the R1's 40 frames per second. So there is a chance that Canon could show some love and give a boost to, I don't know, 31, 32, or even 33 frames per second. And that new autofocus system that we see in the R5 Mark II that also comes in the R1 with its cross-type autofocus points, well, I can guarantee you we're going to see that same new autofocus system in any R3 successor. Although, with Canon's cripple hammer, I wouldn't be too surprised if they deliver it the same way the R5, without those cross-type autofocus points, the same way that Canon, and I know you're thinking that doesn't make any sense. Well, when Canon released the R3, the Mark I for $59.99, they crippled that camera by giving it a single CF Express Type B card slot and a UHS-2 card slot. It really didn't make any sense for a camera that was basically their flagship camera at the time, kind of beating out the 1DX Mark III in most ways, to just give it a single CF Express Type B card slot, despite costing $500 less than the flagship camera, it didn't really make any sense. And at a price, currently today, with the Mark I being $39.99, it doesn't give Canon much room to really increase the price over a successor over that. In terms of video specs, both cameras can do 6K up to 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second in 4K. We're just not going to see any better video resolutions or specs than we are seeing in the Mark I. And that goes for the photo side too. We might see some bumps, some tweaks, but whatever you see in the R1, the R3 Mark II can't possibly be any better if it's designed to be a successor to the original Mark I. Just look at the rest of these specs side by side. Can you tell me how Canon could possibly release an R3 Mark II that would be worthy of an upgrade? That would be worthy of our money? I can't. I honestly can't. And looking at these two cameras side by side, one thing is clear to me, is that if this was a planned exercise, Canon simply hasn't left enough room between the original R3 Mark I and the recently announced Canon EOS R1. The R3 has no real heritage. Canon can do whatever they want with it. However, the 5 series and the 1 series are well defined. And that's a very good point, Craig. It's a thought-provoking point. And that kind of leads me to my next question. What then is missing from Canon's lineup? And I'm talking about their high-end lineup that could lead to a successor in some form or another of the R3. Call me crazy, you certainly wouldn't be the first, but I'll die on the hill that this would be the perfect place to stick a big megapixel sensor. The birth of the 1DS would be nice. And the 1DS that Craig is referring to had an 11 megapixel sensor. The 1D, which was released 1 year earlier, had a 4.1 megapixel sensor. And since I've been covering the Nikon Z6 going back many months, whenever I talk about that camera, it also leads me to talk about the Nikon Z7 Mark III, because for the last 2 renditions, both cameras were announced at the same time. With the exception of this time, the Nikon Z7 Mark III was notably absent. And one thing I'd suggested is that with the Nikon Z8 and the Nikon Z9, it didn't really make sense to release another camera priced in around the same area to have the same resolution. That the Z7 Mark III should be a high-resolution camera. I think Craig is onto something here. The R3, it definitely feels lost. Lost and forgotten, kind of like that old Roanoke colony. And just as archaeologists fail to identify what happened to that Roanoke colony, experts, hobbyists, and consumers alike are lost. They feel forgotten and confused. How could Canon possibly put a camera between the R3 Mark I and the recently announced Canon EOS R1? There's only one other company that I could imagine possibly sticking another camera in there, and that would be Sony. What Canon's simply done here is painted themselves into a corner with their back up against the wall. And for me, when my back is ever up against the wall, whether I'm in a corner or not, there's only one thing I can think to do, and that's to break the goddamn thing down. Canon, be bold. And not bold like the movie Troll 2, which isn't actually a sequel, but Deadpool and Wolverine bold. Rethink the R3. Don't give us a camera that's been designed by bean counters, that's been designed by committee and approved by a focus group. Give us something that's designed with heart and soul by creatives, for creatives. Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levy show us what's possible when you don't focus on the bells and the whistles to tell a story, where you don't use focus groups and accountants. They focused on why, friendships, humor, and delivering a product to an audience that was much needed amongst a sea of slapped together products and mediocrity. And Canon, it works. So if you're going to come out with an R3 Mark II, be bold. Come out with a camera aimed at creatives, thought up by creatives. Don't use bean counters to come up with a budget and then use committees to design it and then have it approved by focus groups. Because if that's what you're going to do, we can all see what's plainly going to happen. That right now in the current lineup with your current way of thinking, any successor to the R3 just doesn't make any sense and likely isn't going to sell well. And I think this is the perfect moment to thank you for your continued support, whether it's commenting, liking, or just watching. And for those of you that go a little step further and use my affiliate links and my pre-order links, like the pre-order links for the recently announced Canon EOS R5 Mark II, thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated. In fact, it's literally what keeps this channel on the air. The money I make by YouTube is probably, I would say, less than 10%. It's all the commissions earned, which is anywhere from 2 to 8% from the pre-orders and all the cameras on sale, that really keep this channel going. And right now there's 20 to 30 cameras on sale from Nikon and Canon, from the top end of their lineup all the way down to the R100. So there's lots to purchase, there's lots on sale. But what I want to do now is I want to continue a little bit further and talk about the reference I made just a little while ago about the movie written and produced by Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds. I saw it on Friday. It was the perfect birthday present I'd received in a long time. When I first watched the original Deadpool movie, I laughed. I laughed a lot, but I was embarrassed at laughing at it. The movie was so vulgar, it was so it felt offensive, and I was embarrassed to say I loved the movie and I liked it. And I think part of the reason for that is anybody other than Ryan Reynolds, I don't think, could have pulled it off. It kind of reminds me of the movie that came out a few years ago called, what was it, Free Guy? Free Guy, I think it was. And if you watch that movie, you can see a character that really loves his friends, that it's all about friendship, it's about working together and also finding love. And maybe you'll think this crazy if you haven't seen the movie, but watch Deadpool and Wolverine, because I think it's taking that same idea and throwing it in Deadpool and Wolverine. Because if you watch the entire movie from beginning to end, one thing is very evident, is that this is about building friendships. It's about saving their own part of the world. It's not about their focus on saving the world like Superman style. It's about saving the lives and friendships of the people they love in their own world, which saves it for the rest of us. And I think that the way they did this, the way Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds did it, with very dark matter, but using humor. And I think that any movie, no matter how well done, if it invokes humor, it just makes it that much better. If you don't follow Marvel movies or Marvel comics, I think you'll love this movie, because I certainly don't. I never heard of Deadpool until the first movie came out. And I'm honestly turned off about all these comic movies, these Marvel movies, because they just seem to be slapped together. They just don't have heart and soul. They don't have humor. Deadpool and Wolverine is the first movie I've been to in about 5 years where I've seen the cinema full. I mean full. And I got to experience it in one of those D-box seats. And I don't know where you are in the world, but maybe they call them something else. But there are those seats in the back, in the top rows that move and shake. And I put it on the highest setting. And I got to tell you, the first 10 minutes of that movie, oh my God, was it a blast. It was funny. It was gory, but it was funny. And I'd say it's the best money I've ever spent on entertainment since seeing the original Star Wars back in 1979. A really good movie. Don't take your kids to see it, not unless they're old enough. But no, it's a really awesome movie. And that's kind of how I'd like to close off this video. But thank you. Thank you for staying and watching to the end, for commenting, from using my affiliate links and my pre-order links. Thank you so much. This channel is very much about community. It's about friendship. And that's why I still do my best some 5 years later to respond to your questions and comments, at least for the first few hours. This is a community that I built and is very important to me. So enjoy your day. If you've seen the movie, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, whether you liked it or hated it. I'd like to hear. But that's it for now. Have yourself a great week, and we'll see you again soon.